This might challenge what you think you know about wealth, progress, and where modernity actually came from. When people imagine the origins of economic sophistication, their minds usually jump forward to Renaissance Italy, to Dutch trading houses, to British industrial capitalism. The story is often told as if complexity, finance, and global trade are inherently Western inventions that emerged almost spontaneously once Europe woke up from the so-called Dark Ages. But history does not work that way. Long before stock exchanges, multinational corporations, or modern banks, one city was already operating at a scale, speed, and level of coordination that would not be matched for centuries. While much of Western Europe remained fragmented, localized, and economically narrow, this city did the opposite, deliberately, systematically, and with stunning success. It wasn't improvising its way into prosperity. It was engineered for it. This period is often labeled the Islamic Golden Age, but that phrase hides more than it explains. It makes the rise of wealth and knowledge sound accidental, cultural, or mystical, something that simply happened because people were enlightened or lucky. The reality was far more concrete. What powered this explosion of wealth and innovation was a specific system, built intentionally by a political authority that understood something rare in history, that prosperity does not emerge from conquest alone. It emerges from structure. That system was the Abbasid Caliphate, centered in the city of Baghdad. Not a vague civilization, not an abstract golden era, but a designed economic engine built to connect the world. Welcome to The Financial Historian, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks. A city built from an idea. In the year 762 CE, a decision was made that would quietly reshape the global economy for centuries. The Abbasid Caliph, Al-Mansur, ordered the construction of a new capital city. This alone was not unusual. Empires had been founding capitals for millennia. What made this decision extraordinary was how and why the city was built. Baghdad was not inherited from a previous empire. It was not an ancient prestige center. It was not chosen for symbolism or tradition. It was designed. From the first stone, Baghdad was planned with a single objective: to function as the central processing hub of the known world. This was not poetry. It was policy. The city's famous circular design, the Round City, was not just architectural ambition. It reflected centralized administration, controlled access, and coordinated movement of people, goods, and authority. Government buildings, military headquarters, markets, and religious institutions were deliberately positioned to reinforce order and efficiency. Baghdad was not just a place to rule from, it was infrastructure. Geography as strategy. Baghdad's location was no accident. It sat along the Tigris River, near the intersection of the most important trade routes of the early medieval world. To the east lay Persia, India, and China. To the south stretched the Indian Ocean trade network, linking East Africa and Southeast Asia. To the west stood Byzantium and the Mediterranean economy. To the north ran routes into Central Asia and the Eurasian steppe. This meant something unprecedented. Goods, ideas, people, and capital could flow through Baghdad in every direction. Silk from China, spices from India, gold from Africa, furs from the north, glass and textiles from the Mediterranean. But geography alone does not create wealth. Plenty of cities sat on major trade routes and remained marginal, violent, or stagnant. What made Baghdad different was that it was designed not merely to sit on trade, but to absorb, coordinate, and amplify it. Baghdad did not resist complexity. It was built to manage it. The rarest commodity, trust. At the heart of Baghdad's rise was something far more valuable than gold or silver: trust. The Abbasids understood a fundamental truth of economic history. Money does not move first, confidence does. Trade at scale requires predictability. Merchants do not risk their lives and fortunes crossing deserts and oceans unless contracts are enforceable, laws are consistent, and violence is the exception rather than the rule. By the standards of the early medieval world, Abbasid governance was remarkably centralized and predictable. Tax systems were standardized, legal frameworks were broadly consistent, courts existed to resolve commercial disputes, administrative records were maintained. This mattered more than any individual ruler's brilliance, because trust does not depend on personality, it depends on institutions. A global economy in a local world. At a time when most people lived and died within a few miles of where they were born, Baghdad operated on a global scale.
This alone set it apart. While much of Western Europe functioned through localized feudal economies, where wealth was locked into land and status, Baghdad normalized long-distance exchange. Distance was not treated as an obstacle, it was treated as an opportunity. Trade was not occasional or exceptional, it was continuous. And crucially, it was diversified. Baghdad did not depend on a single route, resource, or region. If one trade corridor faltered, others compensated. If one market cooled, another heated up. This is a concept modern economists call risk diversification. Baghdad was practicing it centuries before the language existed. Money without metal. Commerce at this scale required more than coins. Carrying large quantities of gold or silver across deserts invited theft, loss, and violence. The Abbasid economy solved this problem not by abandoning money, but by abstracting it. Merchants relied on early forms of credit instruments, systems that allowed value to move without metal physically moving. A trader could deposit funds in one city and withdraw them in another, relying on trust networks backed by legal enforcement and reputation. In practical terms, this meant capital moved faster, risk was reduced, trade expanded further, wealth circulated instead of stagnating. This was not accidental innovation. It required legal clarity, contract enforcement, and social mechanisms that punished fraud and rewarded reliability. Baghdad provided that environment. Markets were regulated enough to function, but not so tightly that innovation suffocated. The state did not micromanage trade. It did something far smarter. It made trade possible. Knowledge as capital. Baghdad's wealth did not come from commerce alone. It came from something far rarer in pre-modern history, the systematic investment in knowledge as an economic asset. This is where the Abbasid Golden Age truly earns its name, and where modern narratives often underestimate its importance. Knowledge was not confined to religious study or elite curiosity. It was actively sought, funded, translated, and applied because it made the system work better. Better mathematics meant better accounting. Better astronomy meant better navigation and calendars. Better medicine meant healthier, longer-lived populations. Better engineering meant better infrastructure. Institutions like the House of Wisdom were not symbolic libraries. They were research centers. Scholars were paid salaries. Translation was incentivized. Debate was encouraged. This created something extraordinarily rare, a professional intellectual class integrated into the economy. Why this matters? Baghdad was not rich because it conquered more land than everyone else. It was rich because it reduced friction. It lowered the cost of moving goods, money, and ideas. It made complexity manageable. It turned trust into infrastructure. This is the real lesson of Baghdad's rise. Wealth follows connectivity. Stability follows institutions. Prosperity follows systems that outlive individuals.